Well, good afternoon to our folks here on the East Coast, and good morning to the rest of the country. Thank you for dialing in. We see the participants rolling in this morning. I'm here with special guest Allison Hoyt, who is the technical director at Nationwide. Allison is a bit of a celebrity in our agency. She has published a white paper that was the catalyst for us building this presentation, running with this concept. We had the opportunity to present this to about 90 BGAs in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. And I did it without Allison, and probably didn't do the presentation or white paper as much justice as I can today with her here with me. So, live in person, Allison is going to join us. I'd like to just kind of switch gears a bit in today's presentation. So the last couple, we've made more of a panelist type discussion, and we've had more dialogue and conversation rather than slides and educational material. Today's a little bit more educational, and I'm going to defer to Allison in some of the more technical parts of the presentation. And I think what you'll find is that this particular concept reaches a much broader audience than you would have anticipated, using some complex terms like split dollar and ILITs and asset protection that most of the industry just kind of pegs to ultra high net worth. But what we're going to share with you today is how to bring this down to a whole different demographic, and why these three basic planning components of an estate plan are so relative to middle market. And we're going to reach low net worth clients and high net worth clients, and then there's subcategories of each of them. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Allison. Our slide should be moving at the moment, and here we are. We'd like to set the table, and setting the table is a brief reminder on some of the tax laws as they pertain to life insurance. These 5 Internal Revenue Tax Code sections really put the power of life insurance to work. So I'd like to just remind you 101A, death benefits, past income tax-free, 7702, tax deferred growth, 7702A, that determines, this is a highly publicized section today, being the IRS has changed some of the limitations we can put. This dictates how much contribution we can put into a life insurance policy and receive favorable tax treatment. Section 72 allows for tax-free policy withdrawals, and Section 101G, which we're going to dive into a little bit today, and even expand on that with some true long-term care riders. That defines how a life insurance death benefit can be accelerated tax-free in the event of a chronic or terminal illness. So we're going to unpack this and use some of these tax codes to incorporate into the new wealth transfer, which we call the quote unquote new wealth transfer that Allison has coined. So one code that we would also like to recognize is Section 7872. Okay, this is probably the most underutilized code in life insurance. And what we did at Life Brokerage was just kind of snap this on to Allison's concept of the new wealth transfer, and added the option to utilize Section 7872, which provides the authority for split dollar loans. And a split dollar loan sounds far more complex than it really is. It's nothing more than advancing a loan from party A to party B, and party B then can do whatever they want with those proceeds, including buy life insurance or long-term care linked benefits, or invest in real estate or stocks and bonds. So it really is that simple. It's a loan between party A and party B. And the IRS says, as long as you book that loan appropriately and establish a promissory note, which oftentimes is a 1 or 2 page document, that is not a gift. So we'll cover in a few slides why we like loans so much, opposed to gifts or outright gifts, and how loans can create flexibility provide control, access, and give some flexibility to an estate plan. So we talked briefly about split dollar and why is not just for the super rich, right? This is nothing more than an intrafamily loan. And if you Google intrafamily loans, there are 12 examples that come up in the internet, and you'll see that they're often used in far more situations than you would imagine. But we're focusing on number 7 because this is a life insurance webinar, and loans to trust involving life insurance, or coined the term split dollar, and financing premium plans. And again, this is nothing more than a loan between party A and party B. In this particular instance, it's a loan between the grantor and the ILIT. So, we'd like to show you how to utilize this particular concept in various wealth concepts across the wealth segments across the United States. And you'll see high net worth and low net worth, and you'll see how we reach a very large demographic. And Allison will cover, the demographic of folks who actually incur an estate tax versus the number of folks that actually could incur the middle market form of estate tax, which is a long-term care claim. So, just a reminder, the tax gorilla has left the room. We have a $12 million exemption through 2025. That'll be reduced to $6 million in January 2026. $12 million a married couple. So less than 1% of the population can expect a federal estate tax. But people age 65 and older will have a 70% chance of needing long-term care. And chronic illness is not just for old people, right? Long-term care, chronic illness, these are terms used interchangeably. They're not just for the wheelchair bound. In 2020, over 133 million people lived with chronic disease, right? These people, you just can't see their disability because 96% of them are invisible to the naked eye. And what Allison and the team at Nationwide does so well is help you identify what these chronic illnesses could be: heart disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, chronic kidney disease, diabetics, right? 6 in 10 in the US have a chronic disease. Long-term care solutions help preserve income and assets. Allison, you want to talk about the different types of long-term care solutions available to consumers today?
Yeah, sure. I can give just a high-level overview. I'm definitely not a product expert, but as far as long-term care solutions, I'm sure where everyone on the call is aware, traditional standalone long-term care is still an option. It has traditionally been the most affordable, but it also has the use it or lose it proposition that turns off many consumers. And the innovations to the traditional have been the rider on an annuity or long-term care rider on life insurance. And the version 2.0 of the life insurance policy with long-term care rider is the hybrid policy, which nationwide it's called Care Matters. I think of that more as a long-term care insurance policy with a life insurance benefit. And I have product as part of the new wealth transfer, which is a sales idea that really encourages you to have your clients think about long-term care insurance planning as part of their estate planning, right? Typically it's, you're going to die, you need life insurance, but things have changed. Well, we're still going to die. Medicine hasn't advanced that far yet. But it encouraged people to think of long-term care insurance as part of their estate plans.
Thanks, Allison. And as it pertains to the trends in American wealth and American health, what do you perceive to be the greatest threat to the mass affluent?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter that the mass affluent is not going to be exposed to an estate tax. That's really not the largest eroder of wealth for our mass affluent clients. The costs of long-term care have become the new estate tax for our mass affluent clients. And what I mean by that is the estates of the mass affluent will still be diminished, and perhaps significantly so. Not 40% of an exemption going to the IRS, but same or similar amounts going to the LTC. So if your clients are concerned about wealth transfer and leaving an inheritance, long-term care insurance should be part of that discussion on wealth transfer and estate planning.
Allison, would you say that as a JD and a technical director at Nationwide, the paradigm shift in estate planning kind of falls in the following pecking order? It's make sure I have enough to live a full, healthy life, protect my assets from my future ex-son-in-law, right, through creditor protection, make sure a chronic illness doesn't completely devastate what I worked my entire life for. And then, oh, by the way, if there are any transfer taxes, let me make sure I have some liquidity to provide to my children.
I think that's a pretty fair, outline of priorities. I think it's different for every person. But the estate tax is not wagging the estate planning dog these days for 99% of Americans. So other things like chronic illness and long-term care planning and asset protection planning are taking priority for most people, the majority of people, almost all people.
So Allison, I keep making reference to this white paper and owe you all the credit for writing this white paper and publishing it on behalf of Nationwide. What prompted you to write this paper, introduce this concept, and even take it to the road and discuss this at various industry professional meetings?
That is a great question, Anthony. He's thrown me a little curveball here. So when I got to Nationwide, my colleague Sean Britt had one part of the new wealth transfer already written, and that was for the high net worth clients. And we define high net worth as being exposed to the estate tax. And most high net worth clients are going to say to you, I'm going to self-fund their long-term care. Why are you even offering me a Care Matters or a linked benefit product or a rider? But positioning long-term care for high net worth clients as an estate tax mitigation tool, they're going to listen to that, or at least they should listen to that. So Sean had that component of long-term care planning and estate planning set. And when I got to Nationwide, I looked at this, her work, and I was like, this isn't enough for a presentation. We need to talk a little bit more. Let's bring it down to earth. And I started to develop the idea for the mass affluent and long-term care insurance planning. Mass affluent households, between $1 and $5 million of net worth. Mass affluent defined as not exposed to an estate tax. And largely the inspiration for that comes from my own family and personal stories that I've heard of other people. And, I think about my parents, and my dad has worked so hard his entire career, and they saved and they saved. They obviously don't qualify for Medicaid, but what a tragedy would it be if they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars to the cost of long-term care. And I'm not trying to say that because I need an inheritance or I want an inheritance. It's just so sad to see your life's work leave and eviscerate in the last 5 to 10 years of your life. So that's a problem, right? That's a huge threat to most of our clients as families. And I'm from Long Island, and I know you guys are mostly, a lot of you East Coast. They need to be prepared, and planning with insurance is the best way to do it. Some of you may be familiar with so-called Medicaid planning. I don't want my family to go through that. Some of you may have experience with, so-called Medicaid planning. Getting insurance is the best way to be prepared. And speaking to our mass affluent clients in, not estate tax language, because a lot of them are never going to be exposed to the estate tax. But they're going to be, their estates are going to be significantly diminished. And if they like the idea of wealth transfer, it's not going to turn out the way they want, most likely.
Well said. So as we start to break down the new wealth transfer, I'm gonna, I made reference to just adding one little twist to it, and this is the concept of loaning cash or assets to trust versus gifting. And the vast majority of our agents communicate with us that sometimes they run into hurdles in that gifts are forever, and there's a sense that they could never get back what they put in. And, with longevity risk and other, and the cost of living and lifestyle going up, clients seem to like the flexibility and the control and liquidity. So, a lot more often than not, of late, we've been making private loans because AFR rates are so low to trust, so that we have the ability to take back or amortize or have some additional flexibility. We're also going to talk about how this can be used as an estate planning tool. But first, I'd like Allison, as a JD, why do we need an ILIT if we're not high net worth clients per se?
Yeah, so irrevocable trusts. Well, I should say first, I don't recommend people willy-nilly putting policies in irrevocable trusts. When it comes to life insurance, my default position is always the owner as insured. That is an elegant and efficient solution and probably works in more than 90% of the cases. You have to give me a reason to depart from owner as insured. And unfortunately, I see too many people trying to look fancy and sound sophisticated and throwing out the word ILIT. And to me, an ILIT's only indicated in two situations, one more than the other. Estate tax exposure. That is a great reason to have a life insurance policy owned by an irrevocable trust. And the second being creditor protection. And, depending on who your client is, we all have different creditor risk profiles. Whether or not that makes sense is going to be a very client-specific decision. So irrevocable trusts are great to own life insurance for those two reasons, I would say. But naming an irrevocable trust as the beneficiary is a totally different story. Personal ownership with an irrevocable trust as beneficiary, love it, right? Not many people are equipped to manage millions of dollars. We don't want that to get dissipated to, unscrupulous spouses. So I definitely love irrevocable trusts as beneficiaries of assets. Whether or not they should be the owner of life insurance is a very specific inquiry.
Great little twist there, Allison. So just to recap, owner is the insured, ILIT as the beneficiary. So let's just take one step further. If you're going to combine the ILIT as beneficiary and long-term care, how do you do that? How do you suggest we kind of marry the two?
Sure. So any of your clients that currently have irrevocable trusts with life insurance in them, which means at one time they were likely exposed to the estate tax. It can be as simple as adding a long-term care rider to those policies post-issue. You would simply, your client, the asterisk there is your client would have to be insurable for long-term care to add a long-term care rider post-issue. If that's not possible, then you're looking to do a 1035 exchange to a life insurance policy with long-term care rider or to a linked benefit product. To do a 1035, they have to be insurable for life insurance. But again, I'm not advocating people putting policies into ILITs now. What I think we're going to come across as advisors is clients in their 60s, maybe late 50s, with pre-existing ILITs, and they're coming to you going, what did I do this for? Kind of like exactly what I was saying. Like, you only do it for two reasons. I'm never going to be exposed to the estate tax. We don't know that, but it's unlikely. Why do I need this ILIT? Okay, well, trusts, as we just talked about, they're great to have, especially from a beneficiary standpoint. Let's not get rid of these ILITs, but let's repurpose them for a future long-term care event. And to do that, we can add the rider or do a 1035.
Okay, so you just described how we marry the two. Now, what happens if the insured has a long-term care event?
Okay, so it's not as straightforward as someone owning their own policy personally. If someone has a long-term care event, the insured has a long-term care event, benefits are typically paid to the policy owner. And in this case, that is the trustee of the ILIT or the trustee of the trust. Now, the insured has to cooperate with the trustee in order to be able to get those benefits paid to the trustee. All right, so most of you know that with ILITs, the insured who's having this long-term care event is just the grantor of this trust, so the creator. The insured is not the trustee and is not a trust beneficiary. So it's not as easy as the trustee going, long-term care benefit, insured, here you go. It's not how a trust works. The trustee would breach its fiduciary obligations. So how do we get those long-term care benefits that are payable to the trust, to the insured grantor who needs them? And the first place that we should look for our mass affluent clients, those who don't have estate tax exposure, is those so-called SLAT or BLAT provisions, spousal lifetime access trust or beneficiary lifetime access trust. The trustee is able to share those long-term care benefits with a trust beneficiary, who is typically that insured spouse or child. And then after making the distribution of benefits to that trust beneficiary, the spouse or child can then share those benefits with the insured grantor who needs it. So it's kind of like a leapfrog, lily pad approach when it's trust owned, but it can work.
Okay, great job setting the table. So let's dive into a couple case studies and see how we can apply this concept. Case study number one, the new wealth transfer. This was applicable to 5 different wealth segments, right? The middle market, the mass affluent, high net worth, and mid-tier millionaires. Not quite yet the high net worth, the ultra high net worth. So tools a BGA can use in conjunction with Nationwide that can help you, the financial advisor or the agent, demonstrate the potential issues a retiree or pre-retiree can experience. One of which is INSMARK and Wealthy and Wise. It gives you the opportunity to look at the perfect plan, the as is, right? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for 8 more years. I need $25,000 a month in retirement. I'm going to sell my closely held business. I have a couple million in Vanguard, right? This is the situation. It allows you to also compare the current plan versus the plan gone wrong, a long-term care claim, right? What happens if I need $125,000 a year to support my long-term care needs for a 3-year period or a 5-year period? It gives you a hypothetical, right? And it shows the destruction of assets and retirement plan. And then it allows you to incorporate the solution, right? Number 3, the new wealth transfer. Again, insured as owner, ILIT, long-term care rider, potentially a private loan, and how you can kind of wrap this up and just show it side by side. A tool that your BGA should also be providing to you is taking advantage of the Nationwide Retirement Institute, which will do an independent study for you showing potential healthcare costs in retirement. If you as the agent can establish a partnership with a law firm to help pull all this together, to draft and communicate and document this new wealth transfer, it could be a wonderful center of influence where you're actually delivering opportunities to the law firm versus asking to receive them. And it goes a long way as you get to know your client and you provide planning solutions versus just selling product, because it has gotten tougher and tougher to sell product. I mean, let's face it, the insurance industry per se is in a recession. Excessively low interest rates, further exacerbated by COVID, have made product pricing difficult for carriers. You can't just go and replace 7 out of 10 policy reviews, right? You need to enhance, you need to provide value, long-term cares, ideas, different planning techniques. So, I'll give you just a quick example on some of the outputs and not get too bogged down here, but you can take a makeup of a particular client, husband and wife. You can input their goals into a software package like Wealthy and Wise and Insmark, and you can show all your cash flow goals are met. We're going to transfer a bunch of money to the kids. Your transfer taxes are going to be a couple $1 million, and everything went perfect in the perfect world. Versus, okay, what happens if a chronic illness occurs hypothetically in year 5? And with inflation, today's value of $10,000 a month grows to $150,000, $120,000 a year grows to $150,000 a year. 5 years from now, your business income is reduced from $500,000 to $100,000 because you can't go to work, and your business is liquidated at 60% discount because you were the business and EBITDA isn't there, the operator isn't there, and things go wrong, right? And here you are again, just showing a potential long-term care claim between the years of 5 and 9, and how your cash flow needs are not able to be met. It completely devastates the wealth to the heirs. Versus, okay, let's talk about an ILIT, right? Owner as insured, ILIT as beneficiary, incorporate a promissory note between the grantor and the trust, life insurance with long-term care or chronic illness, and establish that ILIT with a SLAP provision and purchase $2 million of increasing death benefit, a promissory note, and you've been insulated from any potential chronic illness claim, in which, remember, 6 of 10 Americans live with chronic disease, and 70% of Americans age 65 and older will experience some sort of chronic illness. Right? So if you compare the 3 plans, perfect world, the plan gone wrong, and then the new wealth transfer, you'll see a significant improvement in a visual format to share with your clients, and you've helped them do planning that they've typically neglected to jump into. I want to expand a little bit and give you some bonus slides here. And this is really the crux of Allison's white paper, and how long-term care and estate planning for the ultra high net worth, or the quote unquote self-funders, can be used as a tool. And I'm going to defer to Allison just to describe here this high net worth client and what does self-funding mean?
Yeah, I'm glad you're using the term self-funding, because the made-up term self-insure is such a pet peeve of mine. You can't self-insure. You can't immediately leverage your money. You can just pay for things. Sounds a lot less sexy when you say self-fund. That's what you're doing, and that's accurate. So yeah, when we're talking to these high net worth clients, they're exposed to an estate tax, and they tell you, I could buy the nursing home, what am I going to do? Buy Care Matters, or are you joking? No, we're not joking. And yes, you can buy the nursing home, but you have an embedded cost to doing that, right? There's no way that they can do all the things. They can do the ILITs, the slats, the flips, the grats, whatever. They can do all the things and still have estate tax liability. So there's actually an embedded cost for them to self-fund their long-term care costs, because any monies that they don't use for long-term care, 40% is going to the government. That is the cost of getting lucky. And that is a win-lose scenario. You win because you don't need the money that in your mind you've earmarked. Maybe you've kept an extra $1 million or $2 million liquid. You don't need it. So for long-term care, great, you died peacefully in your sleep one night, but 40% of that money is going to the IRS. We can create a win-win solution that really gets rid of this embedded cost, a win-win solution that reduces the amount of estate taxes they pay, their estate pays, and leaves more money to the family.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about hypothetical client sets aside $1 million. Talk about self-funding, Allison.
Yep, and this just puts some numbers to it, in their head. I won't invest that extra $1 million. I'll keep it in a CD, which technically they're losing money, right? A lot now with inflation. The return on that is negative, the real rate. But anyway, besides the financial reality of that, they keep $1 million in their estate, and in their head, they're going to use it for long-term care. They do have a good chance of using it for long-term care. 70%, as you mentioned earlier, of adults 65 and older will likely need long-term care supports and services. And guess what? If they do blow through that money, or most of it, their plan has worked well enough. Well, there's also a chance that they end up not using, 1 penny of that $1 million or not much of it. And that untouched 1 million, 400,000 of it is going to the IRS, and that in the form of an estate tax. And that's what we refer to as the cost of getting lucky.
Well said. Well said. Okay, so we've established long-term care riders and linked benefit policies can be used in an ILIT. We've covered the strategy whereby the LTC benefit is paid to the contract owner, who's the trustee, right? Not paid to the person or entity that provided the care. We're looking at indemnity-based payments versus reimbursement style of payment to optimize the plan. Let's talk about the use of collateralized arm-length loans and removing money from the trust.
Yes, so this is the key to the strategy for our high net worth clients. I don't care if their ILITs have SLAT or BLAT provisions. That's not going to do the estate tax mitigation that we're looking for. We're looking to loan out the long-term care benefits from the trust to the estate so that we are creating a debt in the estate and therefore reducing the amount of estate taxes eventually paid. If you can get $1 million or $2 million out of a long-term care contract and turn that $1 million or $2 million of long-term care benefit into $1 million or $2 million loan in the estate, you've essentially just given your client $2 million more of estate tax exemption, which is going to save them 40% on that $2 million. And these loans have to be legitimate. Ideally, there's something in writing between the trustee and the insured grantor. Collateral should be pledged, any asset with a value exceeding or equal to the loaned amount, and interest paid, interest charged and interest paid. And here's the thing with the interest, we want the rate to be as high as defensibly possible. And that's again, because we want to increase that debt to the highest legitimate amount in the estate. The higher the debt, the more estate tax exemption we've given them, and the greater the estate tax savings.
Brilliant, Allison. And what do you see as in common practice? What is that highest defensible value? And it could be a state-driven question, but best practice.
Sure. What we think is defensible, and again, the attorney has to be the one okaying it, would be taking a look at the guaranteed loan interest rate in the policy and adding 1%. We think that's a defensible interest rate.
Okay, so let's apply this to a real case. And Jane, Allison, you're familiar with Jane, so I'm going to turn this slide to you.
Sure, she is one of your high net worth clients, and you've done some ILIT planning for her. And despite all the planning she's done, she still has a $5 million estate tax liability. And so you've heard this session, you've heard us talk about the new wealth transfer. And you go back to Jane with an idea, we can make your wealth transfer even more efficient. We could reduce the amount of estate taxes you paid and increase the amount of money going to your family. Let's add a long-term care component to this policy you already have in your ILIT. And these clients are not going to be wanting to get rid of their ILITs. They appreciate they have the estate tax liability. They're not going to get rid of them, but let's enhance them. So Jane listens, and she's luckily insurable, and you're able to add a rider to the contract in $1 million. And you talk to her estate planning attorney and say, we could do some estate tax mitigation for Jane in the future if we loan these benefits from the trust to her. And if she needs long-term care, she can use her vacation home as collateral. The interest rate here would be 7%. And don't worry so much about the last part, about the loan interest paid back just days before death. That's just an issue of tax minutia that I'm happy to explain. But for Jane's situation, we'll pretend that yes, the loan is paid back just days before her death.
Let's put some math to that concept, Allison. Walk us through the result.
All right, so she has this $1 million rider, and lo and behold, in the future, she does have a long-term care event. Trustee receives the cash indemnity long-term care benefits from Nationwide, $10,000 a month here. And, we wouldn't recommend Jane taking a $10,000 a month loan from the trust. Maybe she's going to take a loan quarterly, and those loans should be in different amounts. And that's to avoid any incidents of ownership argument. So we pay those benefits to the trust, and Jane borrows funds from the trust and uses those funds to pay her long-term care expenses. And just as she has exhausted the full $1 million of benefits, and there is a $1 million more loan in her estate, she takes a turn for the worst, and her legal advisors are called, and they say, pay it back. So the $1.352 million is paid back right before Jane unfortunately passes away. So the result, what things look like at Jane's death, the $4 million remaining death benefit is payable to the trust from the policy. We've accelerated $1 million of that death benefit in the form of the long-term care rider. And we've also added to the trust that $1.352 million from Jane's assets. Now, when it comes time to do Jane's 706, the estate tax return, $1.352 million will not be included in her gross estate. We have removed and transferred that money to the trust without any gift or estate tax liability. We've essentially given Jane an additional $1.352 million of estate tax exemption, and that's going to save her estate over $500,000, which more than compensates for that embedded cost she has, the cost of getting lucky, perhaps, in her estate. And I will say, as far as the numbers here, if you want to get maximum long-term care benefits, you're going to look for one of those linked benefit products, right? A Care Matters with inflation riders, you can get over $2 million of benefits. And Nationwide, our max long-term care rider payout is typically $1.5 million. We can go to $2 million in an exceptional case, but I've never seen an exceptional case. Just to give you an idea of, the sky, unfortunately, is not the limit here, but we can save, $500,000 to $1 million plus.
Great job, Allison. So Allison has done a great job answering questions throughout the slide presentation. And at this time, we do not have any open questions. Allison, has been a pleasure. This has been a lot of fun. It's always great to be with you and learn from you. Keep up the good work. This presentation will be recorded. At the conclusion, sometime this afternoon or this evening, all attendees will receive copies of the slides, sample Insmark case output, a copy of Allison's white paper, and a fact finder for nationwide healthcare cost of retirement presentation. So, at this time, we'll bring the call to a close, and I thank you for joining. Reach out to your life brokerage marketer and feel free to discuss this concept. And again, we appreciate your attendance. And Allison, thank you again for co-presenting.
Thanks, Anthony.
Bye-bye.